Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to be interviewing our guest today, Tatum. Tatum is a media powerhouse. She is the executive producer of Anchored Media, and she is also the founder and the host of the podcast Blessed and Bossed Up. Y'all welcome Tatum to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining. I'm so excited that you are here. So for everyone who wants to go ahead and check out her social, she's on Instagram at Tatum. That's TatumTemia, or you can see it right there in your podcast screen. So welcome. Help us understand your fire behind your brands. What fires you up every single day when you wake up? What is that thing that lights you up and speaks to you to empower your audience?
I have to be honest with you. I don't wake up every day fired up.
Come on.
Like today, I'm extremely exhausted. I'm a new mom. And so running my business and showing up for my family is a lot. So I don't wake up every day fired up, but I wake up every day and I stick to my commitment. I made a commitment some years ago that I was going to live a life that made God proud and that I was going to commit to his plan for my life, whatever that may be. And so every day, what keeps me going is my commitment to that. You know, when I first got saved as I call it, when I truly committed my life to God, I made a decision that I was going to, like I said, get on board for his plan for my life. And a part of that was me making sure that I was on track with his methods to getting me to success. And a part of that was me reworking my definition of success. And for a while, my definition of success was to have this $1 million company, I always wanted to have a successful family and to be wildly successful at business. And God, it's not that he didn't want me to have those things, but he had to make sure my priorities were in order so that my success or desire for it didn't become an idol, but rather I had a commitment to pleasing him. And so I made this, when I got saved, I made this commitment where I had to redefine success. And for me now, success is simply pleasing God. And so for a while, he took me on this journey of studying Jeremiah. And as I was studying Jeremiah, I realized that Jeremiah wasn't liked. He wasn't loved. Nobody wanted to listen to anything he had to say. He wasn't rich. He wasn't what I would have defined as successful, but he was successful because he was obedient to what God told him to do. And so for me, commitment to that and me keeping my promise to God, which was I was going to be on plan for, or that I was going to commit to his plan for my life, is what keeps me going. There's no other option at this point. And so every day is just another opportunity to serve God and to get closer to that well done.
That's so good. I love what you said about save. I think we can all relate to that. Like, thinking that we all have made it. And then when we realize that we haven't, and God has to bring us back to some place and we have to actually follow the plan that he wanted us to be on the whole time, that's powerful. Mm-hmm. So what about what happened when you started Blessed and Bossed Up? What place did that come from to actually inspire the women that you're reaching? And what was the revelation? Like, originally you had this plan, you wanted to be $1 million business. And then God showed you, actually, I'm trying to take you on this route. So what was the transformation moment and what is the vision for Blessed and Bossed Up now?
Yeah. So originally I started podcasting. My show was not called Blessed and Bossed Up. I started podcasting about 3 years ago with a co-host. And at the time I was getting ready to launch my company where I was going to be helping people build brands. My background is in PR. I have a master's in business. My undergrad is in PR, and all of my work history prior to becoming an entrepreneur was all in marketing. I love to build brands and to make them successful. That's what I was good at. That's what I love to do. And so I wanted to then, instead of doing it for a traditional corporation, I wanted to do that for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And I saw podcasting as an opportunity for me to get in front of my target audience. So at the time, a lot of people, podcasting is a new industry, period. And it was even newer 3 years ago. And I saw a lot of my target audience moving towards podcasting. So instead of me trying to get on the social media bandwagon and figure out how I was going to stand out, I wanted to create something that got me in the front of my target audience, but in a way that fit the lifestyle that I wanted to live. I didn't want to have a phone in my face all the time because I'm building this brand on social media. I didn't want to create this persona online that I then had to live up to. I wanted to just be myself, and I wanted it to be easy. And so podcasting provided that platform for me because I can talk for an hour a week and reach an unlimited amount of people. There's no algorithm that's limiting who is able to hear my show. So for me, it was a great opportunity to get into a space that was new. And also podcasting, I realized, allowed me to get into it allowed me to speak to my target audience in an uninterrupted way and in a more intimate way that's allowed on social media. So on social media, or anytime you get on the internet, there's so many people vying for your attention at that one time. There's ads everywhere. There's other influencers who may be creating content. There's companies who's creating content for you. Everybody is fighting for your attention. Now with podcasting, when people listen to podcasts, they're in the car, they're at work, they're in the gym, they're at home, and most of the time they're listening to the show while doing whatever activity in their real life. And so now I'm able to insert myself in the real life of my audience where there's not many other competing voices for that time frame. And so that was my rationale for starting a podcast in the first place. And I wanted to use it as the marketing tool that took people from listeners to customers. Now, in the midst of doing this is a great marketing plan, but in the midst of doing this, I was also building my relationship with God on the back end. And for so long, I was taught that faith and business had to be separate. I had no idea that I could do these two together or that they were related in any type of way. And so as I was building my relationship with God on the back end, he began to show me that, no, I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. That vision that you're trying to build is this idea of being an entrepreneurial success. This is right. You know, you're on the path-ish, but you need to get on my path so that I can guide you on where it is that you're supposed to go. And you're supposed to make me in charge of your business. You're supposed to make me the CEO of your business. You're going to be the manager. And so I was like, okay, let's figure this out then. And so as I was figuring it out and praying on behalf of my business and seeking God on behalf of my business and learning what it meant to be an entrepreneur, because at that point I was around that same year, I had quit my 9-to-5. And so I'm in this thing full time. So figuring out what being an entrepreneur looks like, while also figuring out what having a relationship with God looks like, because so many of us are taught religion. We're not taught relationship. And so I'm now trying to figure out what it means besides what the church folks say, to actually build a personal, intimate relationship with God where I don't have to go through a third party to get to him. And so as I was doing that, God began to speak to me to change my podcast. So he says, do it by yourself. And he gave me one instruction at a time. And each yes built up to where we are now. But the first instruction was to do the podcast by myself. So I procrastinated on that for a while. And then eventually I made a decision to do it by myself. Then he said to change the name. So we changed the name from what it was to Blessed and Bossed Up. Then he said, okay, now I need you to teach people the same journey that you're on. So take them on this journey with you of making me the CEO of their business, because so many of them are trying to get kingdom success with worldly principles, and it doesn't work like that. And so I was like, okay. And so just yes by yes, God began to unveil to me more and more about what I was supposed to do through the podcast. So the podcast was already on a great trajectory to be successful. I was already making money from the podcast with my original intent, which was to funnel people into my business. God also told me to shut my business down. So at this point, I'm making money. I'm growing. I'm working in my business full time. Like I'm on this path that I wanted to be on, but he told me to shut the company down. So I had to make a decision on if I was going to be obedient. And again, going back to, I made a commitment. So I stuck with that. I shut the business down, and he told me, I'll tell you what the business is. So that left maybe a year of no business podcast. And then during that time, he told me to put out a journal. So I did a prayer journal called the God is My CEO prayer journal that did really, really well. But eventually, you know, when you put stuff out, it does well for a while, then it kind of tinkers off and stabilizes some. And so that did well. Then he told me to do the book. I did the book. And so these things are great, but these are products. These are not businesses. And so I'm like, God, okay, I hear you, but where are we going with this? So maybe after a year, of being in this season where I'm waiting for God to tell me what's next, and just being obedient to these yeses with no clarity as to where these yeses are leading up to. He tells me to start Anchored Media, which is a media company where I develop and executive produce podcasts. With this company, we've worked in less than a year. We've worked with over 50 podcasters. I've taken shows from 0 listeners to charting on Apple Podcasts. I've taken doors from making hundreds of dollars in their businesses to thousands of dollars in their businesses, and went from not having a business to having a 6-figure business in less than 6 months, just by following the path that God had me on. And so the vision, honestly, is whatever God tells me it is. And, you know, there is a huge vision for Blessed and Bossed Up. Blessed and Bossed Up isn't the business, it's a brand under Anchored Media. It has a huge brand in and of itself, but Anchored Media is the business. Yeah. And Blessed and Bossed Up has a whole vision in and of itself, where we're really teaching entrepreneurs how to make God the CEO. And we do that through the books. We do it through our membership program. And then Anchored Media, our vision is to really infiltrate this mountain of media. And the 7 mountains of influence is something I speak a lot about. And one of the 7 mountains of influence is media. And so Anchored Media's job is to really take over this mountain of media for the kingdom of God. And so that's the bigger vision that we're going towards by just simply doing every step that God tells us to do.
I love that, Tatum. And something that really spoke to me is how God spoke to you to tell you to pull back. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. I feel like so many people can relate to that. I can especially relate to that, and having that pause where you step into faith. You step back from where you were and you have to step into the faith, the pause, the wait, the hold on. Let me refocus where God has taken me. And in that moment, you started training your ears to listen to God. God started producing new things through you. And I love it because it seems like in that moment, God was able to birth something even bigger from you. And if you hadn't taken that pause, then I wonder if that would have happened. So yeah, that's encouragement for so many people.
Yeah, but not to cut you off, but I don't want to make it sound too pretty, because while you can see where I ran down where we are now, that was a year period of me waking up every day and not knowing what was going on.
Yeah.
Of me feeling like, God, why? Like my business was going well. I was making money. So it's not like things weren't going and I had to regroup. Things were going very well, but I had to make a decision. Was I going to, and I strongly believe I would have been successful by not following God, but I would have not lived up to who God created me to be. And that was a crossroad that I had to decide which way was I going to go. And I made a decision to go his way. But a part of his way means, even though I'm trying to have a successful business, I have to deal with trauma. I have to deal with myself. I have to deal with my baggage. I have to go back to things that I buried deep and address those things. And in that year period before the business came and the success came, as far as the company goes, it was every day like, God, what are we doing here? Why am I in therapy? Why am I? And at the time I was getting ready to get married. So why am I in therapy with my husband, future husband, and I'm in therapy by myself, and I'm mending family relationships, and I'm waking up every day, I'm not making any money. Like, what is this? And that was a year. And them was some long 365 days. And so while it sounds good to be like, you know, that was a pivotal moment, and all of this came after, I don't ever want to downplay that, because while it was very difficult, it was necessary, right? God has to perfect. His word says that he's going to perfect all things concerning us. And a part of that perfecting process is stretching us, is building our faith. It's us saying yes when we don't have the confirmation, we don't have the clarity, when we have no clue what these yeses are going to amount to. And that is hard. And a lot of people give up on God's plan because they expect it to be easier. And so I just wanted to just make sure that I emphasize that, because I do believe that there will be a lot of people who are in there. Maybe a lot of people right now who are in that space where you're giving up because it doesn't look like God's way is adding up. And it's always going to look, I'm gonna make sure I say it right. It's always going to feel like you're by yourself, or you're going to compare yourself to people that seemingly aren't even checking for God like that. And they're doing well and you're not. Like, those are the things that the enemy uses to keep us stagnant. Those are the things that the enemy uses to get us off of God's course. But faith is something we have to remember, that faith in Hebrews 11:1 defines it as confidence of things unseen and assurance about things hoped for. So in order for you to exercise your faith, you have to be confident that no matter what it looks like, that no matter what I see, I'm going to trust what he said.
Yes.
And it's not easy. It's not easy one bit. It's the hardest thing. It is so difficult. And you really have to, and I know for me, I got to the point where there's a scripture that says, don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough trouble of its own in Matthew. And so for me, I had to take it day by day because thinking about tomorrow was too hard. It just fueled my anxiety of why am I not where I want to be yet? Why did I obey God and it seemed like my life got worse? So I just had to emphasize for those who may be in that space to not romanticize it to the point where you feel like it's supposed to feel good because it ain't, or it's supposed to be this great awakening, amazing thing. It's just not. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be hard. It's going to hurt. You're going to be crying. You're going to be upset, but it all will work out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I can relate. I can definitely relate to it not being pretty. I feel like a lot of the part of the mantle for FaithStrut is to help remind people that even though it hurts, even though it's painful, that doesn't mean that it's not a part of God's process in your life, and that the things that God causes you to go through, they may not all be pretty or comfortable, but it is going to produce something that's powerful inside of you. So I think that's a great reminder, because I know a lot of times when we get in situations and we go through a lot of the process and it's very painful, it's almost excruciating because you're involving all of your senses. Your spirit is in pain, your emotions, everything is going through it. And so a lot of people are like, this can't be God, what's going on? But that's exactly where God wants us. If we look through the Bible, people grew their strongest faith in God at their lowest moments. So it's so true. That's so true. What advice would you have for our listeners who were considering stepping out on faith, but did not know the first step to make, and they knew that they desired a platform in podcasting?
So you want to know specifically for podcasting or in general?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are really, they desire to start a podcast brand, or they're interested. They like the podcast brand. And what advice would you get as the maven of podcasting, of especially Christian influencers in podcasting? Would you give those who are like, where do I start? What do I need to be focused on?
Yeah. So first things first, one of the things I always tell people is being a person of faith or being anointed does not give you an excuse to be a bad business person. So just because you're doing something for God doesn't mean that you could skip over the necessary steps to building something that lasts, right? The Bible even talks about counting the cost. So it's important to make sure that you understand what you're getting into first. So before you even hop out there, is a podcast really what you want to do? It's not enough to say, I want to start a podcast because I have all of these things to say. That's awesome. But is a podcast what you really want to do? The number one mistake a lot of new podcasters make is they aren't consistent. And it's the simplest thing, but it's such a big thing, because when you even get to the point of monetizing podcasts, if they can't trust you to put out a show, and when you say you're going to put out a show, how can your audience trust you to spend money and you're going to give them what they spent money for? So it's important, first of all, to make sure that's what you really want to do. And if you're going to be able to keep it up, are you going to be able to keep it up when people aren't listening? Are you going to be able to keep it up when your numbers are fluctuating? So going into deciding if you're going to do it first, just make sure is that something you want to take on. Podcasting is very time consuming. You have to record, you have to edit, you have to put it up. And a lot of people, especially those who are starting out, and especially those who are Christian, is we have these deep things we want to talk about, but we lack the practical tools to build it. And so I would just first take a second to learn about what you're getting into, and make a decision on if this is a space that you want to enter into. After you do that, when it comes to your show, make sure that your show has a unique selling proposition. So unique selling proposition, USP, is a marketing term where it just makes sure that you have something, a brand that stands out from other brands that are similar to yours. Now, when I work with podcasters, the number one mistake is like, or one of the top mistakes that podcasters make is they have such a big, what's the best way to say it? They know what they want to do. They're so excited about the mission and they want to talk to people about their purpose and brokenness and following God, but they don't understand marketing in a sense where they can't define what makes their show unique. So they create now a show that just get lost in the noise of all the other podcasts because they didn't take the time to build the brand in that way. So perfect example, I'm working with the podcast right now in one of my programs where they talk about purpose. And purpose is a word that we hear all the time. Everybody is talking about, how do I know my purpose? Everybody, if you figured it out a little bit, you're talking about how people can pursue their purpose. It's just such a word that's so overused that it doesn't hold much weight anymore enough. And when I say this, I'm talking from a marketing perspective.
Yeah.
So I shift from being spiritually deep to business technical. So business technical Tatum right here. Because I don't want y'all to be like, oh, she said that purpose is it?
No, you're good.
A business stance. So it's so overused to where it doesn't stand out enough for it to catch someone's interest. And so with that, and actually, let me not use this example because I don't want to talk about this person's show while we're working on it. Of one of the shows that I worked on that I'm done with, her show is about self-care, which is the exact same thing. Very oversaturated, always everybody uses this word. So it's to the point where it's like, we're not even going to say the word self-care. So when I was working with her, I'm like, okay, what are you really doing besides self-care? What problem are you solving? A lot of people run into the hiccup where they want to inspire, but they're not solving problems. And so my specialty is I teach people how to make money podcasting. So I'm always going to talk from a perspective of how to eventually convert your listeners to dollars. So if you're not solving a real problem, people are not going to pay for that. People don't pay for inspiration. They pay to have their problem solved. And a lot of podcasts go out trying to just inspire, and they have these very feel good missions, but they don't have anything unique, and they haven't identified what is unique, and they aren't solving problems. So with this particular show with self-care, I asked her, so what are you really doing? And so she actually works specifically with entrepreneurs who are constantly pouring out. So they may have these big platforms, they have these shows, they have these families, they have these successful businesses. So they're a certain caliber of business owner who's always pouring out and always showing up for the business to the point where they're not showing up for themselves.
That's specific.
Very specific, right? So we changed the show name from whatever she was thinking to The Refill. So we don't say the word self-care at all. One of the business offerings that she had was a self-care plan where she works with that level of person to create a plan that they can implement to make sure they're taking care of themselves. So we changed it from a self-care plan to a refill plan. And so we structured the show to where she's addressing the pain point of this person. She's presenting the solution enough to where they feel some sort of resolve, but they still need more to fully have their problem solved. And then she offers after the show, after they work with her, a self-care or a refill plan. And so then this allows her to now connect with her audience more. That increases listenership because you're a lot more specific with the person that you're talking to. So you're not just talking about self-care generally. You're talking specifically to the entrepreneur who makes a certain amount of money and has a certain amount of demand who isn't taking care of themselves.
I love that.
They're able to know now she's positioned as the expert for their particular problem.
I love that.
With their friends, they are telling everybody about it on their social media accounts, and then they're paying her to solve their problem. So having that unique selling proposition where you're very specific as to who you're talking to or what your point of view is a big thing. And also making sure that you're solving a problem with your platform after you make a decision on if this is something you want to go into or not.
That's good. And I think that's good for anyone building any type of brand.
Yeah.
So Thank you for our mini branding coaching session. That was so good. One question I want to ask you, Tatum, and I know some people answer this question in different ways, so feel free, but do you have any regrets in what you did in the past, recent past, or even further back from how you maybe stewarded things with Blessed and Bossed Up, or the work that you did before? Are there any things you would change?
It sounds cliche, but I wouldn't change anything because I see the value in even the things that I did wrong. Some of the things that I may possibly change is taking as long as I did to get on God's plan.
Oh,
He told me to change the show, but it took me about 6 months or so to even, well, he told me to do the show by myself. That was the first instruction. It took me about 6 or so months or so trying to mask my procrastination as waiting for confirmation. And it took me a while to even get on board with that first yes. And so I would wonder, like, where would I be had I said yes sooner? Would my waiting season have been a whole year and some change? Would it have been that long if I would have just said yes to God sooner? But it's a part of my story. You know, I can't change it, so I can't really pinpoint too much. But if I could find anything, it would definitely be I should have obeyed God sooner.
Ooh, that hit.
Yeah.
That hit right there. Because there's about 3 things right now where I'm like, oh, I know God, I'm kind of dragging my feet. I have no right to be dragging my feet in the presence.
On a recent podcast, I was like, when I think back about that, one of the things that I would hate is for God to take his hand off me because I took too long to do what he said. Yes. That would be a regret. And thank God he gave me enough chances, because if he didn't, I don't know where I would be or what I would do had I known that God's hand was on me and I just played myself like that to where he took it off, because he had to use somebody else, because it's so many yeses, or excuse me, it's so many people's lives attached to your yes.
Yeah.
So if you don't say yes to him, he got to find somebody else to do it, because his plan is going to happen. It's going to happen with you or it ain't, but it's going to happen. And I know that I want everything that he saw before he formed me in my mom's womb. I need to make sure that I do that.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I hope y'all are listening. This is good. This is so good. Right now, I feel like y'all, we need that right after this podcast is be like, all right, God, I'm here. Yeah. What do you desire of me? What do you want of me? And I don't know. I know that year was hard, Tatum, but it is encouraging. It is encouraging because we're seeing the fruit of your faithfulness right now. Mm-hmm. So it's encouraging for people who are currently in that wilderness season or in that place of like, what's going on, because they know the other side of it. Yeah. Of obedience is so beautiful.
And God will allow you to recover everything that you thought you lost in that season.
Come on.
Because I remember when I changed the podcast name over, our audience doubled within 1 month. And I was like, what? Because the reason I procrastinated was I felt so unqualified for what he was calling me to do. Like, God, who am I to talk about you publicly? Like, who am I to get on a microphone and tell people to make you the CEO of their business? Who am I? I'm a regular person. I ain't no celebrity. I didn't start out with no large social media following. I'm just a regular person. Yeah, so how can you use me? Isn't there somebody else that just seems to look more of the part? And he reminded me of David. Well, David was minding his business. His dad didn't think enough in him to call him into the house when Samuel came to anoint the king. Wow. And so in that scripture, he says that God doesn't look at the outward, he looks at the heart. And so in that, even though I felt unqualified, I still had to obey God. And in that obedience, he allowed me to recover all. For me to go a year without making money, because God told me to shut down my business. And I had made a couple dollars from selling my journals and books and things, but I didn't have a company. And I wanted a company, not just some products. And so for me to not be anywhere near that, to build a 6-figure business in less than 6 months, that's just God. Less than 6 months to go from nothing to that. And that's only God. You will never lose You will never give up anything for God that he will not give back to you double. Never. And so for me, that's something that I always keep top of mind whenever I have to make a tough yes, or I have to make a sacrifice. Obedience is always better than sacrifice.
Listen.
And even then, going back to like my feeling unqualified, right? Like, God, who am I to talk about you on this platform, where he took me from being that regular person, and I still am, to having this platform of we've reached about 200,000 people a month all over the world via a podcast that was started from nothing. And I remember, and this was a very, very pivotal moment for me. And God be killing me sometimes because I feel like he can be a little dramatic, because I had this opportunity where I went to New Jersey. I'm from DC. I went to New Jersey I had an opportunity to potentially produce a podcast for CNBC. So I'm in this place. I'm waiting to go talk to the people. I see like different various celebrities walk through, and I'm texting my husband, and I'm like, yo, I just saw such and such. And he's like, calm down. So I'm like, all right, let me chill. So I get into this room. They walk me through their offices. Nobody looks like me. And I get into this room, and they're going through my credentials and things that I've done, and the numbers of my shows that I worked on. And they were like, wow, we don't even get these type of numbers for our shows. And I was like, they don't even know what they just said to me.
Wow.
And so I was like, really? He was like, yeah. Wow. So, and at the time we were on tour. And so I'm like, look, I'm going through the meeting. Like, I got to go to Chicago this weekend because we got the next stop of the tour. And they're like, huh, you on a tour? We don't get these type of numbers in our shows. What are you doing? And so later on, I went into prayer about it. I'm like, guys, because I didn't end up working with them. But I was like, God, what was that for? And he was like, I needed you to see where you can go with just me. You in a place with all of these resources. There's hundreds of people in here. Everybody got these computers. They got all this technology and all of these things. And here come this regular Black girl from PG County, Maryland, who started a podcast from her MacBook and a $40 microphone that reaches more people than this $1 billion conglomerate now. And so I'm telling you, he would never let you, he would never, ever, ever
my God.
without allowing you to recover all and giving you double.
Listen, let me just invite you now. When we have our first FaithStrut conference, I just want to officially invite you.
If I can, I'm there.
Seriously, because this is a whole story. This is like one of the flagship stories of faith right now. Overcoming, believing in what God has spoken to you, that it will come to pass. Not only will it come to pass, but God will allow you to soar past your enemies. Gracious. That's powerful, Tatum. That is so powerful. I'm just in shock. Wow, that's beautiful. I'm excited. Do you have one scripture that you feel like encompasses your entire walk, or that you just rely on is your life scripture?
John is one of them. I have many. But it's in John. I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's pretty much saying that I'm the vine and you're the branches. And pretty much if I stay connected to God, I'll bear much fruit.
Yes.
And that's pretty much it is what it is. For as long as I stay connected to him, I'll bear much fruit. So that keeps me going. Also, I believe in keeping God's track record. And I can't say no to God by looking at what he's done with every yes that I've given him. There's nothing that God can tell me to do that I won't do. Some of it I might be like, are you sure? Like, I'm not saying I won't have a little lip about it, but I will always do it because he's been too faithful for me. And not just in business, but in my personal life. There's way too many ways that I've seen God work for me not to say yes to him. And even with that, he doesn't, and based off of the fact that he sent his son to die on the cross for my sins, I remind myself of that. He doesn't have to do anything else for me to obey him, because he's done enough. Every time I open the Bible and I've seen what he's done, there's no way that I can't get on board with God. Like there's no way that I can't say yes to him at this point. There is no other option. There is no, and maybe I should do it. No, it's God's way or it's nothing.
Wow.
And I have a huge amount of confidence about that. Like, and I say it with boldness because that's how I feel. I'm not listening to any and having that ear to God. And that's why going through that year and in that year of me waiting, one of the things that he told me to do was fast once a week for a year. So for a whole year, every Monday I fasted. And in that, and I fasted from food from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And during that time period, God really, really allowed me to build a personal relationship with him. And my relationship with him has a lot of depth to it. And so just now seeing over the years, the way that he showed up for me, it's like checking his track record is always the faith boost I need whenever it gets scary.
That's powerful. Thank you so much, Tatum.
You're welcome.
The track record, that is the one statement that started FaithStrut. So thank you for saying that. I was at a very low point in my life and God said, check my track record. And first of all, I was like, I didn't know God taught like that. I was like, it sounded like, from the hood, he was like, check my track record. I was like, and I started realizing that I did not have faith in a God that literally came through on so much. And so that's what FaithStrut is all about. It's literally writing down in the FaithStrut journal every single thing that God has done for you so that when you come up to a battle, you will remember that God is faithful. You remember everything that he's spoken to you. So thank you so much, Tatum. This has been a blessing.
Thank you. And then also one thing I want to add too is one thing that it's important when we come up against any type of difficulty to change our mindset, because I think whenever we approach opposition, we revert back to shrinking in some way, as opposed to saying that I get to do this for God. Like I get to start a platform and to speak for him every day. Like that's an honor. I get to live this life for him. This is another opportunity for God to be God and for me to speak of his excellencies. And I think if we think of things like that, when it come up, he said that his word will never turn back to him void. We know that he's not a liar.
Amen.
Everything that we feel like is too big because we have shrunk God into our limited perspective when he said that his ways are above our ways and his thoughts are above our thoughts. So if he knows all things, this is just another opportunity to declare his excellencies, as opposed to another reason for you to beat yourself up for not being qualified. You're not supposed to be qualified because he wouldn't get the glory for it.
Wow.
No, I'm done. I'm sorry, because I can go for a while. So like, let me be quiet. This ain't my podcast.
No, that's good. Sorry, I just stuff has to marinate. That's good. Letting God get his excellency through us. So that fear, because I know so many people struggle with fear. It's like a thing that it's a part of us. It's like normal to have fear. And to let that fear stop us, because fear is normal, but when we let it stop us from producing the things of God, I love what you said about looking at it as an opportunity for God's excellency to be produced through us. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Do you have any more things that's on your heart, or also anything that you want to invite our listeners to, that you're offering to Blessed and Bossed Up community, Tatum to Mia community as well?
Well, I invite everybody to check out the Blessed and Bossed Up podcast. It's available everywhere that you listen to podcasts, and whatever is new with me is happening. I'll definitely talk about it on the show. For anybody who wants to grow in faith as well as business, we have a society with myself and a great friend of mine, Kavaya. We host the society where it's an online community. Right now, we're on a social media fast, so we're taking 14 days off social media, and we're all coming together. Is there echo?
Oh yeah, I'm hearing the echo. I don't know why it just started.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna mute myself, but you go ahead.
Okay. So we have the Blessed and Bossed Up Society, which is a membership community for entrepreneurs who want to go deeper in their faith and business. We do prayer calls every week. We have sessions bi-monthly. We always have challenges and things going on. So like I said, one of the things we're doing right now is our 14-day social media fast. And we have experts that come in all the time. And it's really just an amazing community with hundreds of women who are on the same path as you. One thing that I realized early on when I decided to live for God is that I had my friends who what might have been, or I met people who were Christian and they understood that aspect. And then I met people who are entrepreneurs who didn't necessarily understand the faith aspect. And I didn't have a place to where I could go to that merged the two, because the faith people got too deep to where they couldn't talk about business, and the business people got too worldly where I couldn't talk about faith. And so this community is an opportunity for people who have those things in common to really grow deeper in their faith as well as grow in their business. So that's at blessedandbossedup.com/community. But of course, if you listen to the Blessed and Bossed Up podcast, whatever's going on, you could hear about it there. You can go to anchormedia.com to learn what we're doing as far as podcasting goes. And that's it.
Love it. Thank you so much, Tatum.
Thank you for having me.
This was amazing. I'm sure our audience will agree. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And we love you, Tatum. FaithStrut loves you. We love your story, and blessings to everything God has in store and prepared for you on this earth. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you.